Awesome. I think we're going to get started now. Okay. Welcome everyone to another Tech Tuesday. I hope you had a great Tuesday today. We have some fun stuff to talk about and important things too. Let's see here. Let's get started. If you want to receive these invitations, or if you want to know ahead of time what we'll be talking about, get post notification, training video notifications when they get uploaded, and a lot more stuff. You can scan this QR code. It signs you up to receive all that information straight to your inbox, okay? If you've already done this, you don't have to do it again. From time to time, I do get some agents that scan it multiple times. So if you've already signed up on the website, you don't need to do it again. However, if you haven't, you may scan this QR code and enroll so that you can get all that information straight to your inbox, okay? If you go to the website, so by scanning this QR code, that's where it takes you. You get, I made this short video so you see all the resources you have at your disposal. You can see let me go back here. It'll give you access to the YouTube channel straight through here. You can subscribe to that and get those notifications through YouTube. You are able to also book a one-on-one with me through the same website if you have any particular questions. You can also check out the Facebook group where you can share any other questions you may have. I'm pretty active on there, along with a lot of different articles to help you on your tech journey and contracts, or maybe even property evaluation journey. Okay. This is another QR code for the Facebook group. A lot of people are asking me about that. So if you haven't and you are active on Facebook, you can scan this code to become a member of that group. It's no charge. It's just all of us. We have a WhatsApp group. And if you are on Facebook more, you can connect on there also. Okay. We have all the coaches on there. Coach Renee's on there. Coach Frank is on there. And you can post pictures, videos, and ask questions on there. All right, so that's what the group looks like. Okay, before we get started, messing with these AirPods here. Before we get started, you can engage with me at any time. You can raise your hands to ask questions. If you know how to do that on Zoom here. If not, you can put your questions in the chat. I will check the chat periodically and get to your questions as soon as I can. And from time to time, I try to have fun polls that you can participate through. I don't have one today, but you may also participate in that way. And of course, these meetings are recorded. So if you are not able to attend maybe a future Tech Tuesday, you are able to go to the YouTube channel and rewatch that. I've recently started breaking down the Tech Tuesdays into smaller clips, because these do go on for a while. I think they're about the size of a movie after I'm done recording these videos. So you may not have time to sit through a whole hour of the video. So you can watch those clips also on the YouTube channel. So it'll have different titles for the different sections of what we covered. Okay, and you can always reach out to me and I can send you relevant videos based on questions you may have. Okay. So today I want to talk to you guys about making interactive listing presentations using KvCORE. Okay, you are able to do this very, very quickly. At this point, I'm able to do this within a few clicks. Of course, there's a first time for everything. If you haven't seen this feature before, we'll be talking about it today together. And as you keep doing this, in the future, you'll see how much more efficient and how much better it is to just do it that way, instead of painstakingly having to go to your PowerPoint app or however else you build it and going page by page and putting that creative work in there, that analytical work in there. KvCORE is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So we just have to get familiar with the interface so that we can start building these ourselves. Okay. I encourage all of you guys to ask as many questions as possible. There are no basic, stupid, or there's all questions welcome. So please fire away as soon as you have them. Again, put it in the chat, unmute yourself, raise your hand, and we'll definitely talk about it. My contact info is at the top of these slides in case you need to reach out to me and you don't already have my contact. Also, it's good to note that this presentation will include a CMA, which we'll cover also in this tutorial. All right. Oops, so that is not part of the presentation. So what this costs you? Nothing. It's absolutely free to build these. As an EXP member, you already get KvCORE for free, so you don't have to pay anything extra to gain this feature, okay? So let's go ahead and go into KvCORE, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. All right. So when you go into your KvCORE system, when you log in, this is the first screen you're going to see. Right now, we're looking at the dashboard. So that the dashboard is going to show you everything that's been going on. People clicking on your website, viewing listings, signing up, all of that fun stuff. So every time you log into KvCORE, this is the screen you will be greeted with. Now, today we're talking about building a listing presentation. And typically when you're building a listing presentation, you might have a particular client in mind that you are building this for. Okay, so you don't have to go into this with a specific client in mind. You are also able to just create a presentation that you can go back to and edit and send to someone else. So this doesn't have to be for one specific person. So I say that because there's multiple ways to access the listing presentation builder. You can tailor it specifically to one person, or you could just create a blank presentation that you can share with anyone. So the first method I'll show you here is building a presentation for a specific person that you have in your KvCORE database. I've made countless videos on adding people to your system. If you still need help with that, reach out to me, please. I'll help you get all those people on your database. You also have, of course, the YouTube channel at your disposal. You can watch anytime and get up to speed there. Okay, but very quickly, if you want to know how to add people, the quick actions button here. Let me make my screen bigger. Oops. All right, hopefully that's much more visible. So the quick actions button here gives you a way to add contacts. So when you click on here, you can fill in that information. And then when you click add contact, that will add a person to your system manually, okay? So that's a quick way to make that happen. Now, let's say, let me go to one of my fake entries here so I can show you guys how to do this. So we always pick Amy. Today, maybe let's pick somebody else. Let's see. Let's pick Gina right here. Okay, Gina's not a real person, so do not contact Gina. However, we'll be using Gina as an example here to build a listing presentation. So when you click on a specific contact, their contact card or page, if you will open up, and you will see their phone number, email address, and all the fun stuff that has to do with them. Now, the way to build a listing presentation is by utilizing a feature called Core Present. It has present in the name. So that'll help you remember what it is. If I zoom in here, this is the button we want to click on. It says Core Present right here. Okay, it's going to be on the right-hand side of your KvCORE, and it will have this, house logo with a play button, and it'll say Core Present. So this is the first way to access the listing presentation builder. So we could just click on here, and it'll take us to that page. So I'll click on this. It'll open up a new tab, and then it's going to load the Core Present feature for us, where we can make that happen. All right, so I want you guys to pay attention to the fact that it automatically fills in the contact information. And when I say contact information, I mean the address of the person that we clicked on. Okay, remember, Gina is not a real person, so even the address is not a real address, I believe at least. So if I go back here, notice how this is the address I have on file for Gina. So by clicking Core Present, since we're building a listing presentation, obviously we'll most likely want it to be for the address we have on file for that person. So KvCORE, knows that, and it automatically fills that information in for you. Okay, because Gina's not a real person and this address is not real, that's why it's giving me this message right here saying that the data was not found and I would have to enter property information manually. So I'm going to remove this because it's not accurate info, and we'll actually plug in an address that we can find here on our MLS. So I'm going to close this. And at this point, of course, you would want to put the actual listing address for the property in question. The property address in question for your client. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to find a random address here on my KvCORE that we can use for this. So let's see, MLS listings. Find something nice here to work with. All right, so there's a nice house right here in San Jose, a single family home. So I'm going to copy the address, this address right here. Okay, 4047 Meridian Avenue. So we'll go to our Core Present. Let's see here. And we're going to paste that address in here. Okay, it's going to ask us for the street address, an apartment number if we have any, city, and extra information. Okay, so I'm going to paste that information in here. Now, as you type addresses in this box right here, it will typically give you a drop down that you can select from and fill out the rest of the information for you. Let me actually refresh this and let's go back to it right here. So I'm going to paste the address in here and notice how it's going to give me more options in the drop down. So I believe none of these actually are the one I copied because this is in San Jose. So let's pick any because we're just building a test one here. So we'll be building a listing presentation for this address, 4047 Meridian Road in the city of Meridian. Okay, so once I have that in there, what I want to do is click next. Okay, so it looks like this address also doesn't have any information. Let me find a good one here. I'm going to refresh. We'll type a random address in here. I'll just type 12. Let's take this one. Let's pay attention to this message on the left-hand side also. It says, enter the address for the property you would like to price. Once entered, we will use MLS data to provide accurate neighborhood comps. So it knows this information because it's pulling it from the MLS, okay? So once you put the address in, we'll click next once more. And notice how at the bottom here, it's going to give me more details to confirm. So based on this address that I put in here at the top, this is again, just a random place I typed in here. It's going to know that it's a single family property. It has 3 bedrooms and it has this amount of living area and it was built in this year. I didn't have to give it any of that information. Just based on the address, it was able to pull that for me and basically fill it out also, okay? So once you have your property address in here for the listing presentation, the next thing we want to do is go to build the comparable section that we'll have in this presentation. Okay, so what I will do here is, let me actually take these off here. Give me 1 second. All right, I hope you guys can still hear me. Frank, are you here? Are you able to hear me fine?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. I don't know why the AirPods just don't want to work for me today. All right.
So once we have our property address in here, it'll pull the property details off of the MLS and fill it out for us here. Of course, I encourage you guys to make sure the information is correct. So make sure that it is a single family property. Make sure that it does have 3 bedrooms. Make sure that it does have, about this size for a living area and the year also. Because the information that we see here is what's going to be used to build the CMA. And we know when building a CMA, you want to find properties that are like the one that you're building the CMA for. So if this information was inaccurate, let's say it was saying 4 bedroom when it was in actuality 3 bedrooms, we might be building, well, we would definitely be building, a CMA that's not really accurate based on, what the real facts are. So make sure all this information is correct. But for the most part, I've never had it, put the incorrect information for me. But it doesn't hurt to double check. Okay. So once we have our property address in here, we have the details confirmed. Next thing we want to do is click on comparable details. Okay. So I'm going to click that. And once we do so, it'll take us to the screen. And at first glance, I do understand there's a lot of different buttons and a lot of information in front of you here, but I'm going to break everything down, one by one. And I encourage you to ask any questions if you have any, especially during the section. There's a lot of things you can click on. So let me go ahead and move myself up here. So this next screen, the screen that we're looking at here is basically the screen where we set up our CMA. All of the work, or at least most of it, is already done for you. This is just a screen that gives you the opportunity to tweak some of the criteria you're looking for your CMA. KvCORE has a built-in generic template, if you will, that it uses to build the CMA for you. So if I scroll down here a little bit, you'll notice that KvCORE automatically for me found 15 total matches, okay, or comparable properties that it's going to include in the CMA. And it's going to break that down for me down here. So it has coming soon, active, pending, and sold matches. So out of the 15 here, it found about 14 matches based on the criterias, and it found 1 active match, okay? So we know when we're building comparables, we want to have properties that actually sold that closely resemble our subject property to help us determine the price that we should list, the subject property for. So a heavy emphasis on the sold ones here. Okay, so it has 14. Sometimes pending, sometimes coming soon also, but heavy emphasis on the sold ones because those are proven to have sold at that price. And we want to base all of our suggestions to the client in reality. Okay, now you may ask, how is it coming up with these matches? How does it know which ones to pick? What are the criterias? If we look at the top a little bit here, I'm going to zoom in here. You'll notice at the top of the map, it has comparable criteria. So this is all generic and by default. And for the most part, I think it does a really good job with the parameters it sets automatically. So based on our address, it already knows that this is a single family property. So it's only going to look for comparables that also are single family properties. So this is our first criteria here. The second criteria is the amount of bedrooms, okay? So it's going to look for properties that have 3 bedrooms also. The next one here is going to be how many square feet. So if you notice at the top here, it has the specifications, if you will, of our subject property, which is the address we put up top here. So our property is a single family, 3-bed, 1,800 square feet, and built in 1920. And down here, it's looking for any single family with 3 bedrooms between 1,440 to 2,160 square feet. And it's going to look for all years and any property sold between now and 6 months ago. Okay, so this is what it's looking for to generate our CMA for us. And based on these criterias up here that it's looking for, that's how it's generating, these 15 matches and the sold matches, pending, and whatnot. Okay. The next thing I want to highlight also is this map this huge map in the middle of the screen, of course. So let's go ahead and zoom in with the map here. So you have a lot of controls on this map, just like you also do on the MLS. You can zoom in to kind of get a gauge of the area that it's selected for you. So the orange in the middle here is the subject property. This is where our subject property is located, this orange house right here. And every other dot that you see, all the little pins, the colorful pins you see on the map here, are the potential comparable properties that it's going to pick for our CMA. So the next thing I want to highlight here is, if you notice up top, it has this little drop down here that says 1 mile. You're able to tweak this, okay? So by default, KvCORE is going to look 1 mile from the address of your subject property and look for properties that, you know, could be considered good comparables. When we click on this drop down, we can change this. I can extend the circle. I could do 1.5 mile, and it'll broaden, you know, the diameter for us to look for other comparables. Or I can make it smaller. We could do 0.5 mile instead. And then that'll make the sphere a little, the circle a little smaller. And notice when I do that, the total matches go down, obviously, because we're not looking at a bigger area. We're looking at a smaller area. So after chatting with our comps coach, you know, Coach Renee, he told me that a good number of, again, this will vary by client, but usually you want to shoot for maybe 10 matches in total. The reason why is because you do not want to overwhelm your clients or your potential clients with too much information. Because sometimes when you have too many choices, you become paralyzed, you know, analysis paralysis. So you don't want to give them too much information, and you also don't want to give them too little information. So 10 seems to be that rule of thumb number, but again, it depends on the potential client that you're dealing with. If they want all of the information, everything that's been going on for 5 years down the line, then you may proceed with that strategy. But again, rule of thumb, 10 properties. And that encompasses, you know, sold, pending, active, and coming soon. But again, with a heavy emphasis on the sold properties, because those have actually sold. Okay. So this circle that we're looking at here, zoom into it. The circle that we're looking at here is how far out KvCORE is looking. So I'm going to change it back to the default 1 mile here. It's giving me 14 matches of 15. It's a little bit above, but I'm going to keep going with this just for the sake of this example. So one more thing I want to point out here before we move on to the next step is you're going to notice some of these pins are lighter than others. Some are darker. So the ones that are highlighted, or the brighter colors, if you will, are going to be the ones that it's selecting for the CMA. And the darker pins, such as maybe this one right here that my mouse is on, are the ones that were not selected to be part of our CMA. Because if it shows all of these properties, we would have too many different comparables in our CMA, which is information overload. So you are able to click on each of these little pins and see why they were not selected. So if I click on this one that's really close to the property, for example, I'm going to zoom in here. So this is our subject property. So there's a sold one here. Again, it's red. So that tells me it was a sold one, but it's dark red. So this means it was not selected to become part of the comparable. So it looks like this one, instead of 3 bedrooms, like our subject property has 4 beds, and it's 4% larger. So that gives us insights as far as why this one was not selected to be part of the CMA. If we go to this yellow one right here, oh, actually, no, this is a daycare. Let's go find another color here if we can. Here's a dark green one. So remember, green is referencing active matches. So if I see a dark green color on the map, that tells me that this is an active property, but it does not match the criteria that we're looking for. This one's 5% larger, it says, and it has 4 beds also, whereas our property only has 3. So this would not be the optimal comparable to choose for our CMA. Okay. So that is how to read this map, how to select, a bigger or smaller area. You also have tools at your disposal where you can draw on the map. So I could click on draw a shape here and basically, draw my own surface area. So I could just do this, just like you might do on the MLS. But I like to use a sphere. It's pretty quick and it highlights. Let me clear everything here I did. So when I click the reset, it basically removes the barriers. So I'll do that, and then it goes back to the default 1 map. So that is the right half of this screen, okay? Again, we have the address of our subject property. So this is where our client is potentially, looking to sell. We have the criterias or, the specifications of that property, single family, 3 beds, this amount of square feet and year built. And then right below that, we have the criterias for the comparables we're looking for, which is very important when we're building our CMA. So this is what KvCORE is looking for by default. And then down here, we have our map. We know how to draw on it. We know how to make our surface area bigger or smaller to maybe go closer to that 10 total number of match. Okay, so 29 is a lot of properties. So I'm going to keep it at 1 here. And then down here, we have a little guide, to reference what everything on this map means. And because this map is built off of the Google software, the Google can actually drop in to the streets just like this. I could grab this little buddy person, drag him, and drop him onto the street. And the really cool feature I love about this is it actually retains the little pins. So if I look around, it's very small. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it actually has, the pins to let you know that here there was a potential comparable, but this is a dark red, so that tells me it was not selected. And if I look over to the right a little bit, our subject property is right here, okay? So let me zoom out. And when you're ready to exit this, you can press a little arrow right here, and it'll take you out of there. All right, so this is the right half of this screen. I really want to emphasize that in a large part, this is going to do a really good job at finding some really good comps for you, and you can get started with your CMA by just utilizing this feature and maybe going over it maybe with Coach Renee to see that if everything is looking good, or as you build more practice building your own CMAs, this will streamline the whole process for you. Okay, so any question on anything I did right now so far?
I have a question, Coach King.
Yeah.
I know you did say to use the about 10 matches. Is it just for sold for 10? What of like active and like coming soon or pending? Like, is it just 10 total? Like if there's like 5 active and 5 sold, is that considered 10? Or is it just for sold has to be at least 10 or minimum 10?
Yes, great question. So everything in total. So when you add them all up, 10 is a good number, but again, heavy emphasis on a overwhelming majority being sold, because you don't want to base your CMA off of things that haven't sold. You
Makes
want
sense.
to base it off of things that sold.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions? All righty.
Oh,
Okay,
one more
so
question. I'm sorry.
yeah.
And then for the sold, I know I see it on default says 0 to 6 months. Should I just keep it on default like that moving forward to get the matches? Like I shouldn't push it like further like 7 months or 8 months, just keep it at 0 to 6.
Yeah, that's also a really good question. So, of course, situations are going to vary a lot in the game of real estate we find ourselves in. So, typically, the closer the property, the better. So, if you find yourself in a situation where you have to extend extremely far out to find extra comps, it might be a better idea to go back in time a little bit more, instead of having to look further out. Because the further back you go, the more likely you are to find, some close properties. So
Makes
it
sense. Okay.
comes down to, gauging what's going to be the most accurate information for your potential client.
Okay. And then the miles also, what should we keep it at, just for average, like a mile, mile and a half? What do you recommend for that?
Yeah, I recommend doing a mile,
Okay.
especially for this example right here. We're getting 15 right off the bat. So
Gotcha.
I don't think I need to extend further than that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Sure. But of course, on the other side of that coin, if we were getting 20 matches with just 1 mile, maybe I would want to go down, be much closer, and so it's all a balancing act. But 1 mile is my rule of thumb, I would say.
Okay. Thank you.
That's for sure. Questions, keep them coming. All right, cool. So what we've looked at so far is, so I haven't made any changes. KvCORE automatically did all of this for me. It found these 15 properties. It made sure to include mostly sold and just one active. Solds are going to be the most important. One that's active, at least one or two active, I would say is really good. So you know what, competitors, if you will, are doing to sell their property and price accordingly. So if you wanted to, you could have just moved on to the next step without changing anything here. Okay, so I really want to emphasize that. You could just let KvCORE do its thing, build a CMA for you, and then move forward from that. However, if you like to be more hands-on with your CMAs, then you're actually able to tweak all of these criteria we see up top. Okay, so that's when we get to the left-hand side right here. So notice up here, it'll give you multiple things you could click on. So we could change property type. Okay, so instead of only looking for single family properties, we could also include condos. By checking that, we can include townhomes. Of course, this is not a good idea because you don't want to compare oranges to apples. So I would highly recommend just keeping it at the same type of property. Then we have bed count. So depending on what the market's looking like in your area, maybe there's not another 3-bedroom that's sold. So your comps obviously wouldn't have popped up. You would have got 0 matches. So instead of going extremely far out, maybe you could do 2 to 3 or 2 to 4 bedrooms and then kind of do the math when you do the comp later on. It's much easier when everything's the same, but sometimes the area is just not going to work for you and the sales history is not going to work for you. So you are able to tweak, the range as far as the bed count goes. And notice as I move things around, it updates everything on the right-hand side. It's very intuitive, really cool. So I'm going to keep this at 3 because that's what my subject has. Collapse. And then we have square footage. So by default, KvCORE is going to pull comps that are between 20% less and 20% more in the square footage area. But again, you can tweak this. I think after connecting with, our evaluation expert, 10% on the lower end and 15, I think it was 20% on the higher end was an optimal range. But again, this is just a rule of thumb, okay? So by default, KvCORE is going to look for 20% bigger, 20% smaller, anything between that, it'll pull those in as comps. Okay, but it's not because you'll get more results here that it's going to choose more results. Because notice here, KvCORE still does the math for you as far as selecting what the optimal comp is. So if it's too big, it's not going to select it. But if it's too small, it's also not going to select it. But it'll look for anything 20% smaller at most or 20% bigger at most. Okay. So that's something you can also tweak here by, changing these dials. And as you do that, it'll refresh on the right-hand side. And then we have year built, same thing. We could click on that and then we can change, the range. This one is set to the exact year that your subject property is. But again, if nothing else was built in that same year, you might want to tweak this to pull more results. Okay, so we could do 1920 to 2024 or just 1920 or, another range. But I'll close this and leave it as is because we already have enough comparables. Close date. So let's say there is not a lot of results within this first mile, okay? Because we're only looking back 6 months. So instead of going further out to maybe even another city looking for comps, maybe go back a month or two, okay? A month or two extra. So instead of 6 months, we could look back 8 months. So I can increase this. I can go back as far as 2 years. That's extreme. So I'll leave it at, let's do 7 months, an extra month. So that's going to generate even more results. So notice how my map is saturated with solds now, just based on that extra month. So I'm just going to keep it at 6 here, which is what it was initially. Okay. And then last but not least, we have lot size. This is not one of the things KvCORE is going to have as a criteria. It's going to choose any lot size. It cares more about the living area than the lot size. But if that matters to your specific, circumstance or scenario, that is something you can also tweak here. Okay. But yeah, so anything on the left-hand side is basically you tweaking what KvCORE has already done for you. But of course, when you look over this, you notice you have an adequate number of matches, an adequate number of solds, and maybe at least 1 or 2 active matches. I think that's a good place to, solidify that you have a decent CMA for you right here. Okay. Any questions on this left-hand side or anything I said so far? Going once, going twice. This is a really useful feature. We're going to have to build CMAs as agents. So having this tool under your belt is going to make your life much, much, much easier.
I have a quick question, Coach Ken.
Go for it, yeah.
Does it show the dates of when the properties last sold?
Yes, it does. It shows all the information for the properties, the photos, description. And on the next slide, we'll get to see some of that too.
Cool. Okay.
All right. Okay. So any questions, please leave them in the chat or raise your hand, unmute yourself. So I'm going to move on to the next section. So this is where you build or, get the CMA started. So now that we've built the CMA, KvCORE is going to use all of this information that we have gathered here, if you will, to actually use this in a presentation. So when we are done with this section, we're going to scroll down and we're going to click next, build the CMA. Okay, so this is part 2 of building the CMA. So I'll click on this button. It's going to load. And then this is my favorite part of the whole software. So from here on out, everything we'll be seeing on the screen is what your client will be looking at. So your client's not going to see the previous screen. That was us just selecting the properties that will be part of the CMA. Now, moving forward, this screen and anything you see beyond, towards until the end of this presentation will be part of the presentation that your client will see. So notice up top here, it'll say pricing analysis prepared for this address. So that's the address I put in there. It'll have a date for when this report was built or the CMA was built, which is today. This is very important because you can build a CMA today, But of course, tomorrow properties might sell, something else might come on the market, and that will basically render this CMA that you're building, it'll be outdated because there's new information. So it's important to have this data on there so that clients don't come back and say, well, this CMA was like this, and you said this was like that. But then you can come back and say, I built this based on how the market was on this specific date. And then you can come back and make another CMA for them if need be. But just keep that in mind, okay? Markets changed on a daily basis. So it's important to keep a date as far as when you built your stuff.
Quick question, Coach Kenny, real quick. Would you recommend that we create it like the day of or the day before, just so it's as accurate as possible when we're presenting this to a seller, prospective seller?
When you say that, you mean having separate CMAs with different days? If I
No,
want to make
meaning that, like, what do you recommend? Should we just have it, like, for instance, if I have a listing presentation for tomorrow, right, with a prospective seller, should I have it built that morning, or should I have it done like the night before? Like, what do you recommend? That's just so it's more accurate.
Yeah, of course, it depends. However, the closer, actually not the closer, the later, the closer to the appointment with the client, the better, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
It makes
You don't
sense.
want to have it a week before, but you don't want to also rush and do it on the spot. So maybe the day before, because rarely, a property is not going to come on the market every single day in that area.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
it'll be the same.
Sounds good. Thank you.
A day before, I would say, if anything. Yeah, so they'll have this piece of information they can refer to. And because this is going to be one of the slides in the presentation, they can see a definition of what a CMA is, because you're the specialist. So they might not know what a CMA is. So it'll have a little definition here for them. It helps identify and analyze a property's value based on sales of comparable homes and market trends. Okay. And down here, it tells the client how many comparables you used in your analysis. So all this data is being pulled from the previous slide where we actually selected our comps. Well, KvCORE did for the most part, but they don't have to know that. So there's 14 closed, 1 active. Okay, and then on the right-hand side, while you are in the presentation, this is a little bit more advanced, but because this is an interactive presentation, if something happens and you're not able to meet with that client on that specific date, and a lot of things happen in the market that kind of make this CMA no longer valid, if you will, you can click on the edit search criteria. It'll bring you back to the map and make the information as of that date. Okay, so it'll refresh kind of. So that's something you can always do here. And the client themselves can actually gain access to that through your presentation, because you can email this at the end of all this. But yeah, it'll have all of the criteria you use here, and they could see that. So you looked for properties between this amount and this amount in space, and properties that had 3 bedrooms. So if we scroll down a little bit, this is a really cool infographic that's going to help you start the conversation and also help the clients see why you came to the conclusions you did, and kind of walk them with you, if you will, when it comes to pricing strategies for their property. Because we all know everyone wants to get top dollar on their property. Sometimes our expectations might exceed what reality can provide. But having all of this data that you can show clients will help them understand what's selling for what price, and make them more receptive to the strategies you might have to offer based on the data. And I think this graph down here, which is automatically built for you, by the way, will help you do just that. So notice here, you're going to have this blue line right here. It's basically going to have prices, and on this line, you have little markers with key pieces of information. So the client will be able to see this too. So it says, on the 779 line here, the most recent sold, and it'll give you the stats on that. that was 0.75 miles away from the client's property. It'll have a little section here too that says right here was the average of closed comps, which is this price. Okay, so you're talking to the client, you're letting them know. So this is what the most recent is. On average, this is what the comps are selling for, properties like yours. And the closest that sold to you was this one for this amount, and it gives you, you know, those details down there. And then the highest comparable, the most recent active, and the average of the active comps. So just based off of this alone, the client can see, well, my property looks like this, but so did theirs. So if I try to have an unrealistic idea of what my property is, I might stay in this camp, but the clients want to be in the closed camp. So that'll bring their expectations from this side of the map to maybe on this side where things are possible. And for the most part, I'm sure Frank here would agree also, pricing your property a little bit below is always going to do more good than pricing it a little bit too high. Because even if you know that it can sell for $1 million, when you price it at 950, you'll bring in more eyes and then let them do the bidding and maybe even cross that 1 million mark. Okay, so this graph is going to help you communicate what's going on and what best strategies or methods that you can utilize to get them to where they want to be or as close to it as possible. Okay, so this is my favorite thing about the whole presentation. Now, if they scroll down even more, they get even more information. They can see how fresh or stale the market is, the selling pace, average monthly list versus sell price, price per square feet in the area, pricing rate of change, current shelf life. The client can click on all of these and kind of get nice infographics about all that's going on, all of this stuff. The selling pace, you know, it'll have this graph. Of course, you can review all this so you don't have to read it with them. But all of this is pre-generated for you based on the information that's being pulled from the MLS. So all of this is accurate, okay? Any questions on any of this stuff? Awesome. Okay, so again, I didn't have to do anything. This was just me walking you through what everything means. But even if you didn't know anything, you could have just skipped this step and it would have been built for you. You don't have to have any technical knowledge to even build all of this graph. KvCORE is doing all the work for you. You're just feeding it the information it needs, and it's outputting, you know, the best information for you to share to your client, which is accurate from the MLS and provides a lot of great info. Okay, so once you have this section, again, which is one of the sections your client will be able to see, we can move on to the next step, okay, which is create presentation. Now, notice that you have a Save CMA button at the top here. If you wanted to, you can just save this portion alone, just this screen. But if you wanted to create a listing presentation out of it, you would do the Create Presentation button right here, okay? So something I do want to show before I move on to the next step, and this kind of goes into your question too, Christian. If the client was to click on Review Results right here, this button, it's going to open up this pop-up right here, where the client can click on all of the comparables that we're using for the CMA. So it'll have everything on the map. They can click on the map and see more info, or they can just refer to all the list of properties we selected here on the left-hand side. So let's say they were interested about what happened with Pamplico Drive, you know. It says this one is 168 square feet smaller. It has 3 beds, DOM, days on market, 41, and it's 0.52 miles away. So if they wanted to see what that one was about, they could click on this and then they can see the photos of the property. They can see more information about it. The client can even add a note, you know, say, I like this one. And because all of this is linked to your KvCORE, that you will receive this notification. They can push the like button if they like it. They can feature it. They can delete this if they don't want you to get this comp for some reason, as part of the CMA. But all of the information for all the properties are just a click away, which is really cool. So that's how they would be able to see that. But once we're done with this section and we want to make a listing presentation out of it, we would click Create Presentation at the top right. Okay. One more time before I move to that last step. Any questions on this CMA section? Check the chat. All right, looks like we're looking good. So I'll click on Create Presentation right here. Once I do so, it'll load for a few seconds because it's building our presentation for us. And then it will refresh the screen in just a little bit. There we go. And then it takes us to this screen right here. Again, just like with the other previous screens, all of this might look very intimidating with all the buttons. But again, I want to reassure you that KvCORE has done all of the work for you. Anything you try to do here is you trying to further modify what's already been created. So if you want to tailor everything to your specific needs, you are welcome to, click on, maybe the theme. Maybe you like a more luxury presentation. So I could click on luxury and it'll change the presentation for me. Maybe I want to change the view of the presentation. So under where it says mode, instead of presentation, I would just choose CMA and it will only show CMA slides or a single page. So it doesn't have to be a presentation. It could just be a single page with everything they need to know. Okay. So anything that you see on the screen right now is just further modification, but our presentation is already built. It says so right here. It has 6 sections and 11 slides in total. And if you want to see what it looks like, which of course is a good idea before you present, you can click through all of the slides right here individually on the left-hand side, or you could just click next right here. We'll take a look at each slide together. So the first slide is going to be the title of the property, how many bedrooms, square feet. And if we look down here, because this is my KvCORE, it's going to be branded to me, and it will be to you when you get started doing this also. Whenever you see a little pencil icon, you can tweak, what the text says. So I can call this thing presentation, and then apply, and then that's what it'll say. Okay. If I click next here, it takes us to the next slide. It has a really nice paragraph about why you are the right fit for them. This could be a portion in your presentation. Of course, read this beforehand so you can paraphrase it as you're talking to the client. Next up, you have your CMA section. So remember, we got a chance to select all of these comps. So it's going to show all of that here. They can click on everything because this is an interactive presentation to see more details. Okay. And it has the date it was prepared, so valid for 1/30, which is today. The subject property, which is their house. It has a definition of what a CMA is right here. And it has our criteria that we looked for here. So a lot to talk about. If we go next, it has this nice section that we all saw together. So they can see this infographic here with all of that information. And obviously, at the end of the day, you can only list it for what the sellers want you to list it for. But as the expert, based on all this information that's available to you, you are able to come up with a pricing, recommendation based on what's actually closed. So just for instance, this is just me shooting in the dark, because the average of all the closed comps sold for $791, and ours is very much like those ones. Maybe I could suggest pricing our property at $780 instead. So that's going to get more eyes on the property, more people coming in. And as they see that this is a nice property, they'll start bidding each other up, and we might surpass or at least get to what everything else is selling for. And with good marketing, good photos, publicity, you definitely have a good chance of surpassing what the average is selling for, okay? So KvCORE is going to give you all the information you need to make that determination. So next up, we have this other portion where they can click on extra details about the market. Of course, everything's interactive. They can click on all this stuff and read more about it. Next up, it has why pricing correctly is important. So this goes through what I was just saying. So pricing 15% below market value will yield a huge amount of potential buyer versus on the other end of that spectrum, maybe pricing 15% above what the market value is could only generate 10% of the potential buyers. Okay, so it has a cool graph for you right here. Also, we have, buyer demand graph. This is automatically generated. It has this slide, which is a bit controversial, but it basically estimates how many agents, how many people might be interested in buying a house, how many people are looking online near the subject property area, how many people looking online at that price range and XYZ. Of course, this is just an estimation, but it has a slide for that. It has a slide for your marketing plan. This is a good spot to, lay out how you're going to market their property. It also talks about all the tools you have available to you with KvCORE. So you could tell them how you can build marketing plans for them, smart campaigns, the whole 9 yards. And yeah, this is the last slide of the presentation. It'll say thank you, and it has 2 buttons for them to click on. They could click get started, or maybe they need more time, more information. They could click on that too, and you'll be notified whatever they decide to do. Of course, you'll be in communication with them, but that is a whole presentation built for you in just minutes. If we cut out all the pieces where I'm explaining, you could have clicked 5-6 times and gotten to this point, and it looks great. It's interactive, and it gets the job done. Okay. So any questions before we save this presentation? I'll show you guys how to share it afterwards. Any questions? Cool. Awesome. Of course, this is being recorded, so if you have a question in your mind and you want to go back and get it answered while watching the video later, that is absolutely possible, okay? Yeah, so this is the whole process of building the listing presentation with the CMA portion. So when we're done, all we want to do is click on where it says present and share. Okay, thank you guys for the feedback in the chat. You're welcome. So when we're done with the presentation, we want to click where it says present and share. And when I do that, it will take a second or two to load up. And then we get to this screen. So here it gives us a bunch of different options as far as sharing this presentation. So at the very bottom, if you want to send a link to this presentation to the client, you could click copy or just select this link. So if I press copy here, and maybe I open up a new tab and I go to that link, this is what the client's going to see, the presentation. So they'll be able to click through the slides and, see this. Because you might have a client in another state. Maybe you're a super successful agent and you have people following you on social media, wanting to sell their property. You could just, with a few clicks of a button, build a CMA for their property address, email it out to them, and they get all this information in front of them on their phone or on their computers, right? So you could do that, and they can look at the presentation this way. or I could close this. I can also download and print this presentation by clicking here. Or I can email the presentation directly through here also, okay? But you can only email after you save and add a client. And the way I would do that is just clicking on that, typing the name of the client. So if I was to put Frank Caceres here, which is our contracts coach, I could type his name. It'll give it to me on the drop down. Because he is saved on my KvCORE, I would click add, and then it will attach this presentation to his name in my database, and then I can email it to him. Or I could download and then attach it as an attachment. Another cool, even more advanced feature is you can automatically or directly add a link or a, how do you say this? You can add a listing agreement link to this presentation. So if you're a super amazing agent, super techie, and then you're really embracing all this technology, you don't even have to physically give them the listing presentation. You can upload a PDF of the listing presentation straight through here so that when they're done looking at the presentation, they can automatically sign the listing agreement right there. Okay. Or you can add a link to it if you have it on a Google Drive or something. So that's something else you could do. But yeah, let me see, I think we have a question here. Oh no, you're welcome. So yeah, this is how you build a listing presentation with a CMA using KvCORE. Okay, the last thing I'll show you is, let's say you built it, you forgot to save it or email it. How do you get back to this? Okay, so how do you find your way back here? So because this is recorded, you'll be able to see. So I'm going to close this, right? How do I get back to this presentation? So the way to get to it is, once we have our KvCORE open, you just want to go to where it says marketing, okay? If you hover over marketing, you'll notice that one of the drop-down items is Core Present, which is the feature we utilized. So when you click on Core Present, it's going to open up a new tab, take you to the screen after it finishes loading. And you'll notice, if you scroll down a little bit, all of the listing presentations you've ever built are going to be right here. The last one being the one we just did together, Sims Court. Okay. So here you get access to it. You can view it with the web by clicking here. Then I could just copy this link and share it. You can click here to download a PDF of it, or view the PDF, which will be right here. It's going to load up. While that's loading, I'll go back here. Or you can click this button right here to just email it to a client. So I could type the client's name. Again, I'll use Frank as an example. And I could put a subject to this email, hey there. And then I could add a message and just send this listing presentation straight from here. Okay. Another really, really cool feature to even go above and beyond. Let's say for this listing presentation I built, for example, for 5441 Velocity Avenue. If I click on this button right here, okay, this tab right here is called Analytics. If I click on this, this gives you a report as far as what page your client was looking at, how long they were looking at that page, what did they click on, you're able to see that. So I can see that this has been viewed 11 times. This is a graph showing in minutes versus slides. So they viewed the cover for 4 minutes, they viewed the CMA for 4 minutes, and they clicked on it. It has a little clicky icon. So it goes crazy. You get a lot of data through this, but all that is extra. So this is how you access the presentation. Okay. So yeah, in case you ever lose it. So I'm going to close this back, and there's the PDF version. So it'll open up like this with a lot of photos. Everything's already well built for you. All right, back to KvCORE. Awesome. Any questions, please? Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question. Would you include the net sheet?
The net sheet, if you have, a good relationship with the how do you say, the loan officers and the title rep, anyone that may have, any kind of input as far as what goes on there. Typically, I try not to because I don't want to get that information wrong. Let me open up the net sheet for people who are not too familiar with that is. If you can, it's great, but you don't want to be liable for information that's incorrect on there. So let's say I'm going to go back to our presentation here and show you guys exactly what we mean by this question. Let's see. So if I go to present and share, so one of the options here was add a net sheet. So this option right here, okay? So if I click add net sheet, a net sheet is basically a breakdown of all the costs, the cost deductions that the sellers might incur when they sell. So they get an idea of what all fees are going to be deducted, or what their total take home is essentially. So I try not to add this because I might not know what the state tax is going to be. I might not know what the escrow fee is going to be right up front. I might not know what my real estate fees are up front. So if you have a way to get all this information together from all the respective parties, this may be a great way to put this in here to go even more, above and beyond for your clients. But if not, I would not try to guess this stuff, because they may come back and say, well, you said that this fee would be this and all of that stuff. But again, it depends on the situation, but that's a really good question. All right, no problem, David. Anybody else, any questions? That was a really good question. Put it in the chat, going once, going twice, anybody?
Yeah, I got one more question for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I see you have their add video link. What's that right there?
That is also another good question. So at the end of the presentation, just like you can have a listing agreement link pop up, you can also add a YouTube video link, or any link to anywhere, honestly. It says YouTube or Loom, but I've put any link in here. So at the end of the video, the presentation, you can have them click on maybe a video of you explaining, or talking about this could be anything essentially, but it could be a great example of what you could put in here. It could be maybe, I don't know, a trailer of you showcasing homes, talking about yourself as an agent, or it could be a video of your brokerage and how you've helped, a lot of people buy or sell homes. So anything that you think might add value, you can post a video on YouTube or the service. I'm not too familiar with Loom, and then they can be directed to that to bring the point home even further. I hope I answered that adequately.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
For sure. Awesome, we're on a roll. Anybody, any questions? You can come back for seconds, thirds, please. We covered all of these. Another net sheet, video link. This will just open the presentation. You can email it, download and print it. Yeah, we've seen all of this stuff. Cool.
I have a
Awesome.
quick question, Coach King, real quick.
Yeah.
Along with this listing presentation, I know it's something like about 11 slides you have. Do you recommend if we should put like maybe like an 8-second video or something about us so they can actually see us like a video or something? That's
If you
attached.
could, yeah, if you could do that, that would be amazing, because
Okay,
video
cool.
is so add something like that if you can. That's amazing.
This is a little bit more personable, and they could actually, put a
Ab-
face to a face and see who it actually is. So
Absolutely. I don't want to call it an optional feature. In your mind, you should say, I have to add a video, but
okay,
of course you don't have to, but it's really great if you can.
sounds good. Thank you.
Yes. All right. One last question, anyone? Okay, I think we're looking good. So this was building a CMA and listing presentation using KvCORE. Please contact me if you have any questions whatsoever. My contact info is here. You can scan this QR code to also get access to the website and email invitations and whatnot. Tomorrow we have Evaluation Wednesday with Coach Renee. So this is a great Tech Tuesday to attend because tomorrow you'll be talking to the expert property, comps person. So that might be a good follow-up meeting to attend tomorrow. Same time, same link, 7:30. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Everyone, you're welcome. I hope you got a lot of value out of this meeting, and you have a great rest of your night. Bye-bye, everyone.